Hi, so this is Doug White from Security Weekly and Secure Digital Life, joining you from Orlando, Florida, where it's very sunny and very humid. And I know that you're sitting somewhere else and you're probably listening to this and it's raining and cold, but we're here and it's really, really warm and sunny. I am lucky enough to be joined by Principal Program Manager Tarek Dawoud, who is an identity management professional, and Michael McLaughlin, who's a Senior Program Manager in the same kind of realm. So that is exciting, and they want to come here and talk to us about some things that are being developed and some things you need to be aware of as you go through life in the identity space. Certainly for me, identity management is a giant issue. We face this every day. I get calls from clients every day who have questions, who are getting hammered on different things. So welcome, Tarek and Michael. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Doug. A pleasure to be here.
Glad to be here. Very glad.
Cool. Are you having fun at Ignite?
Yes, very, very busy. Our booth is bustling with people.
Yeah, well, that's a good thing, right? Because if it's not you, it's a long day to stand there. So,
yeah, my voice is starting to go. I've talked to so many people.
Welcome to believe me, I know. I did the booth at DEF CON, and it was just like 3 days of screaming. And yeah, when I came home, I couldn't talk I had to do a show that Tuesday. I came home, it was just like, I was like, well, because it was bad, and that and the dryness didn't help anything either. So it was all like a big problem. So you guys wanted to talk about you wanted to give us some advice first. I think that was maybe our biggest chunk there was you had some three points of advice for everybody. Is this about Active Directory directly or just in general?
Just in general, although obviously we're going to reference our product, Azure Active Directory, but in general, the first tip is enable multi-factor authentication for your privileged accounts. Okay. So this is now a must. It is now clear that passwords have failed, especially failed privileged people.
We've been talking about that all day.
Yep. So without belaboring the point.
Oh, no, it's okay. No, they haven't been listening to us all day. This is a new segment. So
no, but I'm saying without belaboring the point that everybody's been making in the industry, just consider passwords alone to be a non-credential for an important account of any type. And so therefore you either put a cert on top of it, put something. So we're recommending for actual users multi-factor authentication. In our product, we've shipped it as a baseline policy for free for everybody, not just Azure Active Directory Premium or Office. If you got an Azure Active Directory, you can go and enable that policy and to allow you to enable it for all privileged users. And then you can, for example, if you're not ready yet with some scripts, you can disable it for some scripting accounts, but enable it for everybody else. It just should be the norm.
And to be perfectly clear, I think the best practice is turn on multi-factor authentication for everyone in your tenant, or get rid of passwords altogether if you can. But at very least, the admins are just the minimum bar you need to meet. So somebody can't get in, take over that account, and then own your entire infrastructure.
Absolutely. So as we do this, one of the things that the world is shifting to is I call it the seamless cloud. So it's moving my life from this and this and this and all these things to just almost a world where I can just pick one of these up off the table and say, this is me now. And when I'm done with it, I can lay it down and leave it. I mean, it's all like a BYOD type scenario, but it's just for everything. So I need a laptop, I just grab one off the rack and I use it for a while and put it away. How do you see that? What is your mechanism for multi-factor, and how does it work? So what should we be doing, and what are you advocating exactly?
Yeah, I think we have a couple of things that we're really pushing, we really think are great. And, if we're going toward passwordless, using an app, using push notifications to an app, along with having public-private key cryptography, storing that private key in the secure enclave, using that to authenticate, that's really good. And that model is, it's used in the Microsoft Authenticator app. It's used in Windows Hello. It's also used in FIDO. It's not in a phone or device, but it's a token form factor, but it's basically the same implementation. Okay. And those are really good because they get away from that password.
And so are those back end with like hardware tokens, or are they just or fingerprints or biometrics? I mean, Hello uses different biometrics.
Yeah. Well, Hello isn't strictly biometric.
It can be all kinds of things.
Yeah, it's a PIN. It's some sort of gesture that identifies you.
I learned that term here, the gesture term, which meant a lot of other things to me. Being
being a New Englander
in New York, it's like gestures can mean lots of things to a lot of different people, and I know lots of them. So I was like, I know quite a few gestures from New York that are effective on many different cultures and people. But okay, well that makes sense. So the first tip is that we want to use multi-factor. We want to enable multi-factor authentication across our Active Directory environment. I completely agree with that because again, as that seamless Gestalt cloud thing sort of kicks in, the risk starts to escalate as well because now
As
if
we
I've
say.
got little holes sticking into the cloud from that legacy device I'm carrying around, and that allows people to get into my space, they pretty much own my enterprise.
As we say, identity is the control plane. So the thing that stitches together all these devices as you're going to your apps is the identity, right? And so
I completely agree.
And so if somebody can, and so having a very secure device with a nice TPM chip on it and a great cryptography on it is wonderful until you move to the next device that doesn't.
Right.
And now you're exposed.
And then that can be legacy devices too, because I was
Exactly.
making some jokes earlier with some people that were here. I was saying, until you get to the lab that's got Windows 98 in it. And not that there's anything wrong with Windows 98 in 1998, but today that's a bit dated in terms of security and how it works and what's available there. So it can be problematic with anything, and Active Directory included, especially if you give it full admin privileges.
Yeah.
So moving, as what Michael alluded to, also going way beyond your privileged accounts to your sensitive accounts and then going to all your user accounts and just starting to preach the culture of passwordless. We just announced the phone-based sign-in in our enterprise side.
Right.
We've had it in our consumer side. Teaching users to now simply sign in by simply when the login page pops up, it just says approve from your phone, approve in.
Yeah.
No password was actually typed in. No kittens were harmed in that.
No, I mean,
in
and
the
that's
sign-in.
a nice system too. I like that system as well because then there's really multi-layers of authentication there, at least on my phone because it's got facial recognition, which good or bad, it's something.
Or fingerprint.
Or a fingerprint or even just a pin on the phone is now another step in the process and it becomes essentially two-factor, multi-factor kind of stuff.
Right, and I'll be trite and say the perfect setting be the good here, right? There are definitely user populations who, will never have a FIDO key, aren't allowed to carry phones wherever they go, so there are other options available for them. I think we just need to start from the baseline understanding that passwords are absolutely terrible, and anything plus a password or anything other than a password is generally preferable.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I've been advocating getting rid of passwords for, I don't know, forever. I've always thought passwords were a horrible nightmare, and actually I think they've gotten worse because as people got desperate and you saw these policies coming down from on high saying you need 25 characters of Unicode, it has to
4
have
character sets.
Yeah, no character can repeat more than twice, and on and on and on and on. People can't remember them. They write them down on the wall. They share them with everybody in the office because nobody wants to have all these. And then they say, oh, yeah, we make them reset them every 9 days. And I've had people pitch that to me, and I said, that isn't security.
No, and we've been advocating not having password resets. NIST agrees, and they published that in the latest revision of 863B.
But it's really tough to change the mindset. I mean, people forever, for whatever reason, I never thought passwords were any good, even back in the dark ages. I mean, in the 1980s, when I was doing mainframe support, I thought passwords are stupid because people bought these big RACF systems from like IBM that was like, it cannot be broken. And I was like, okay, you're right. But what if the guy gives his password to that guy? All of a sudden, these two people have the same password, and he can get into the RACF system. And yes, the RACF system is completely reliable, and it's not going to be cracked and compromised, but he just used the password to get in. So the whole point of it was and not to mention sharing and all that stuff.
And that's a great segue into the next point, which is try as hard as you can to move off of the legacy password policies that are very dominant in the industry, especially in the enterprise space. The consumer space is actually now wiser. We've moved off of several of these very bad practices. I'll mention a few. If you try to log on to Google or if you try to log on to our properties, you'll notice that we ask you the username first. And if it doesn't exist, we'll tell you your username doesn't exist. And then if you go next, we'll ask you for the password. The security experts in the enterprise side have been for a long time saying, no, you got to ask for both at the same time and don't even tell them which one is wrong. And what we've found, because we run a big, huge consumer service, and so does Google, so does Facebook, many of us have seen that it doesn't deter the bad guys. The bad guys can tell the difference in the response code-wise between a bad username or a bad password. They can actually detect in milliseconds the difference in the response, whereas it totally confuses your end users. And they don't know. Now they call you help desk and they're like, was it that I got the username wrong or was it that I got the password wrong? And now both you and the help desk are confused. And so in the consumer space, we've made a lot of these investments in the password policy. We've pushed it already to our consumer side that there's it's much more effective to block bad passwords, well-known bad passwords, and there are very famous dictionaries now. Even the bad guys sell them for $50. You can buy them.
I have a couple of them at home.
Exactly. So block these. Have a minimum of 8 characters or so. No need for the whole complexity stuff. 4-character sets, a symbol, and I was sitting with one of our directors when he was talking to a customer, and he told him, if you've got the 4-character sets, I can tell you the capital is the first letter, the smalls come after, the numbers are at the end, the symbols are after the numbers.
Right.
And everybody's looking at each other, oh my God. Right. So
The
the bad guys know that too.
The capital and smalls are going to be a season, a month, or a sports team. The numbers are going to be a year, and maybe there will be a period or an exclamation mark on the end.
Of course,
maybe not.
Yeah. So
we've cracked tons. As a forensics person, I've cracked lots of passwords, and I built a lot of dictionaries because we collected, just passwords that we had found in cases and stuff. And you're absolutely right. We see them when they're broken.
The easiest thing you do is just create your own site that signs up for a sports magazine, whatever.
Absolutely.
And request people for a password policy of X, and you will see exactly how they'll behave on their enterprise system.
And you're right. You can map that out just by putting up a fake site. It doesn't even have to be a subscription to pornography or something, and you'll get a bunch of people wanting to sign up, and then you've got all kinds of stuff.
Exactly. So what is the new guidance? The new guidance is just 8 as a minimum, so that's not too easy to crack with hashes, and then after that, prevent bad password. We've got a couple of solutions on our side. We have our own dictionary that we enforce on the consumer and the enterprise side, but we also, for enterprise customers, if you're a big brand, you're a big car maker, a big sportswear maker, it's very common for employees to make their passwords your best car or your famous shoe or what, And so to avoid those kinds of passwords, you should have your own custom list of bad passwords that you enforce on your side.
No, I think that's a good idea. I hadn't actually thought about doing that before. I think that's a really good. Just actually like mapping against like a dictionary. We've done cracking, so we've actually dumped the salts and cracked our own passwords and said, here are the 15 users we need to contact because we broke their password in 3 minutes, and it was 777 lucky. And it was, one of the first things in my dictionary, and I broke it so fast. And we tell them, you need to change your password. I want to get them away from passwords, but that's not always the immediate answer. It's the philosophical answer. It's just like, just quit.
Right.
But then you get, well, how much will that cost me? And I've got to implement all these new things, and I've got these 19 legacy systems that don't support it, and I can't afford to replace them. And we've got apps that are running on Windows 98, and they can't be updated because they won't run on Windows later. So we're still using that product. We've still got this. We've still got that. So there's some issues. And then we've had customers that say, and we can only accept 4-digit numbers.
Yep.
And literally, they're just like, that's the way the system was built. That's the way it was designed. What do you recommend things for people like that? Look, we've had that from like SCADA customers. So these are people that have these back office SCADA systems that are running. They're old. They were manufactured in the 70s. They're industrial control systems that are very, very unique. And they just weren't designed with security in mind. The idea was that nobody would ever touch them, and then the company comes in and says, "We're going to plug this into the internet," and then next thing they know, they've got problems.
Unplug them from the internet. It's the only answer.
Thank you. That's what we advise them to do.
Well, I think first of all, you should preach app SSO as much as you can to a central IDP. Okay. Right? Get the passwords out of the apps.
Yes.
So not those apps you mentioned are never. It's better to have them have their own separate credentials and just be their own separate problem. And as he said, just get it off the internet even if you can. But at least the rest of the apps, anything you can modernize or move to a central IDP, Azure AD supports SAML, OpenID Connect, other providers similarly. Get the credentials out of the app. That's the number one place you get hacked. But hackers are not just, yes, they do password spray, they do attacks, but the best place they find credentials is they go hack something a lot weaker than you. Yeah. Or they find that amazing site with passwords.txt on the root folder that's still there. They get that, and then they run, and then they see the usernames, and if they find somebody who signed up with a work account to their stuff,
absolutely,
then they guess that password is also probably his work password, and then they go and try and log into his OA mailbox or something with the same credentials.
And I call it the trust issue. So the trust issue is that I control this big facility here, and I put massive amounts of security in place, and all my employees are using multi-factor. They're using all kinds of elaborate things, and I've got guys with guns checking, every time you log in, and you mess up your password 3 times, and they just shoot you. It's like very, very strict. But the problem is the guy that puts paper towels in the bathroom. needs access to the systems because they've got an IoT device in their paper towel dispenser that wants to use my network to report that they're out of paper towels, and we say, oh, we'd love to track how many paper towels are being used each day, so we pull that part of that API in, and then that person's got a 4-digit PIN login that's shared by 56 truck drivers, the office staff, and everybody just used the same number login because they didn't want to bother to set it up, and they don't actually have an IT person on staff. And some kid named Benny set it up back in like 1997. And and it's still sad. I mean, we've seen that. The DHS released a report on the nuclear industry, and that report was, they didn't attack the nuclear facilities. They attacked the vendors that were supplying the nuclear facilities.
Very true. Yeah.
Because they had no security at all, and that trust just flowed forward into the secure environment. So, do you think SSO is gonna just start to spread to like a much bigger world?
We hope so. I think I think the direction now with the modern protocols in general being more widely, I think OAuth has helped make a big shift. What Samuel was trying to do, OAuth has achieved, and I think Samuel is still very respected in the enterprise space. Between the two, I think we're getting to a much better place.
I think end users will drive some of that back into the enterprise because end users are starting to see the demand for the ability to just exist in this kind of like recognized space. So you go to your house and the front door turns green and opens when you walk up because it used some kind of multi-factor, that whether it was your phone or it was your face or it was a combination of all those things to just open the door, and doesn't open for strangers. And when you get used to it, and you see it more and more all the time. I mean, I first saw when I had a car that, I have a key fob, and when I start walking toward my car, on 54th Street, I see the lights come on. When I get close enough, I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. And
an example is Alexa, for example, right? So as people are adopting Alexa more and more, you want your calendar to be known to Alexa. So you want Alexa to hook up with your Office 365 mailbox. And you don't want to try and type your password or read your password to Alexa. You want some kind of authentication to the app, whatever. Those are the
not even to
flows.
mention the security risk of having to shout your password at Alexa with the windows open. It's like, password, 555. Yeah, exactly. Oh, yeah. I like that one. You could just walk through the neighborhood listening to people trying to log into a... Yeah, exactly.
Honey, can you try?
Honey, what's your password for... Yeah, oh, yeah, now you got it.
2.
1, 2, 3, lucky, right? Or the house address. Yeah, I could see that, but I think consumers are looking for that more and more. I was talking earlier about just being able to walk through the world and having the world, whether you were wearing HoloLens or something like that, just walking through this facility and having doors that you can go through turn green, booths that you can visit turn green, elevators you can't use turn red, and you're just walking through the world, and that kind of single sign-on that's just like, it's not just a single sign-on here, it's a single sign-on that just goes all the way across.
Ubiquitous, yeah.
And everything turns into bring your own device, so it's just like this adapts to me when I sit down, and I really like that idea that I don't need to carry this. I could just sit down in this booth, and there's a couple of these laying in the corner, and I pick one up, and okay, I'm in. And it knows who I am because it looks at my face.
You saw the announcement with the FIDO on Windows 10, right?
I did, yeah.
You got a FIDO key, you can just walk up to it.
And FIDO is very much, it's very much that. And then Hello is also the other end of that, is just a camera where I'm walking down the street and the camera says, this is a door that's open to you. This is a door that's closed to you. Here's a vehicle you can use. Because I've been talking to my daughter for years about this. She's a very much millennial kind of person. But she loves the idea of just cars you just get in and they take you places and you leave them. They're not yours. They just, it's a zip car. It's whatever it is. And I actually like that idea too. I mean, I would like the idea that I need to go back to my hotel later. I just walk up front and there's cars sitting around and I get in one. Single sign-on says, oh, that's Doug. He's a valid, he's a good customer. He gets in and no problem and no worries. And you're seeing that more with Uber and all these kind of things where it's slowly sort of creeping in. So I think consumers will drive that maybe more than enterprise will because they'll expect it when they go to work.
Yep.
So they'll have it at home and then they come back. Because I've seen that in IT since the 70s. What people had at home started driving what we had at work because people were coming in going, this sucks. Why are our networks so slow? Why are our networks so horrible? At home, I've got this and I've got that. And, then that's what gets the C-level people going, why aren't we doing that? And it's like, well, it's going to cost money.
Yeah. And we're actually seeing a transformation there. To your point, we're seeing now entire IT departments being led with design. I'm not going to name names of the brands, but I've said... No, I thought it was a beautiful message, right?
I
I think it's a great message that the CIO says we're not going to lead with budget, we're not going to lead with technical functionality, or even with security. We're going to lead with design. It's got to be smooth. It's got to work fast. And they're hiring designers inside IT, not even for the product they ship to others. I think that's beautiful. Actually.
Yeah, I mean, what better way to get the rest of the employees of a company to appreciate what IT does, or at very least, not view them as the enemy, than to be presented with beautiful, intuitive, engaging experiences that lets them do the things they want with a minimum of friction, right? So it makes total sense to, kind of bring them on and make them your friend instead of treating them adversarially. It's nice that, IT organizations are starting to recognize that.
Some of that's culture. I mean, I've talked a lot this week about culture to people that I was interviewing, and one of the things we teach literature. If you have a high school diploma, you probably took a literature class of some sort. And maybe it was more sophisticated or less sophisticated, but you took it. But you probably didn't, unless you're a tech person, you didn't take a technology course. You didn't take a security course. And I'm like, but these things that are so integral to our lives, we don't study, but we study something else. And I mean, I like literature. I love to read, but I mean, it's not necessary for me to function that I could understand, Henry David Thoreau, or I could understand this, piece of literature. It is necessary that I be able to have a good password, that I be able to manage my environment, or I'm going to get taken advantage of left and right. So I think some of that is culture change, and a lot of upper management, at least in my experience, was not from that culture. More modern people have used this since they were children, so they've started to learn better hygiene so they don't get taken advantage of. You can tell your kid all along, don't do this and don't do this and don't do this, but until they start seeing people get hurt by it, they probably will do it anyway. And even then they may, but they do learn. I mean, my daughter was coming home saying, oh, she did this and it was really bad, and so she doesn't want to do that because she doesn't want the same thing to happen. So when that starts seeping into the culture, that helps change and put design back into IT. So you had a third tip.
The third tip was more for enterprise customers.
Well, that's okay. We have enterprise viewers.
The ones who are already, if you are already, vanilla AD shop that's got, like 90% of the world, you've got AD, you've got your machines joined to AD. The call out was that you should know that you can now use that in the cloud to also control access to your application. So you can say, only allow Outlook to run on domain joined machines. So this way, it's a DLP posture. So you're saying, I'm not going to let you download an offline copy of a company's mail on your grandma's computer. You can only do it on your corporate computer. That's kind of the gist of it.
I swear I didn't do that.
Yeah, when you're at your grandma's, go to OWA, web-based access, and look at your mail, and that's it. You can't even download or save attachment. Just look at it and move on. But because we think it's a low-hanging fruit, we're trying to use the security systems that they've already spent time and years and energy building. In addition, the MFA is an option. Device join is an option. MFA and device join if you want. We have other controls that we have exposed on our site, but we're encouraging them to, for example, because MFA, we've seen customers also use MFA to the nth degree where they start to shoot themselves in the foot. So customer who has a policy, I'm going to MFA the user every new app, or I'm going to MFA the user every day.
Right.
And what you're implicitly doing is, you're just like why SSO is important. Similar logic. SSO is important not just as preventing the credentials from being in the app. You're also implicit. If the user every time he goes to Salesforce, he gets a pop-up. He puts his username and password. Then he goes to ServiceNow, he gets a pop-up with his password. He goes to Office, he gets a pop-up with his. You're implicitly training him to be a perfect victim for phishing. Next time he clicks on an email and there's a pop-up with a username box, he's immediately going to put him in.
I agree 100%.
You trained him, right? That's how he's supposed to live his life, right?
Yeah.
MFA is the same thing. If you're teaching people to just every 2 hours there's an MFA prompt, approve, or yes, or put in the text code, then he's going to get a prompt at some point caused by the guy from another country who's trying to hack into his account, and he's going to approve.
I think that's a great point.
I think it's another aspect of exactly what we were talking about before, right? Being able to determine in an intelligent way when a user has to do MFA, when they can access stuff, right? That's just better user experience, and it gives them a better view of the IT in their organization, and just a better life in their working world, right?
That's the psychological design. I mean, that's what you were talking about earlier. Is the psychological design to me is about going beyond just the functionality. You say this is a tool. Mm-hmm. That's it. It works or it doesn't work. As an IT person, I keep it working or it stops. But now we're getting into that cultural shift, that psychological, the psychology of the tools, making it more effective, making it safer, whatever. And we have to study those things, and we really haven't. And we're starting to. You're starting to see people like you guys are talking about having designers come in or whatever. And so you're starting to see those kind of cultural shifts.
The consumer side, again, unfortunately, and I think I'm saying these things just to make the enterprise guys wake up. The consumer side is again ahead of the enterprise in that regard, right?
So too, yeah.
When you're your ride-sharing app and you're about to enter your credit card or change your credit card, they might MFA, they might send you a code there.
Yeah.
To you as a consumer, just makes perfect sense. I know why they're doing this now,
Right.
because I'm doing something sensitive. If I'm about to change my direct deposit account in my HR app, it sends me a code then. Or my credit card, for example, the auto pay thing. If I'm about to change the account or something like that, they will send me a code then. When you do it at the right time, end users get it. Like 90, that's what we saw on the Microsoft account side on the consumer side. When you do it just arbitrarily,
well, it's a push pull. I mean, and consumers are always wanting to do things. So you know, I want to ride this ride. You know, if you go to Disney, you want to ride that ride. You want to ride it as quickly as possible, and you'll do anything to do that. So if they tell you got a multi-factor, you're going to multi-factor. Yeah. And you're not going to even complain about it. You're just going to do it. And if they say we want to use facial recognition, you say, oh, yeah, I'll do that. No problem, because I want to get on that ride. You want to wear this thing, I'll do that. But at work, it's a little bit different, because at work, and I mean, I have the same experience. It feels like you're trying to keep me from doing my job. You're trying to make it as hard as possible. You know, I know how I would feel if every time a student asks me a question, I have to log in and multi-factor. Of course, then I'm a good target for phishing, because I get frustrated when it's like, yes. It's like clicking on the user agreements, right? It's like page 5,479. Yes, I agree. And
don't you like the ones where they force you to scroll all the way down before
oh,
they
I
accept
love those.
button?
In fact, I thought about writing a script that would do that for me, because it would be a pretty easy script actually to write that just grabs the bar and pulls it all the way to the bottom, and and then it just beats that. I've seen them where they're timed. I've seen the ones where they actually have a timer, and you can't drag it any faster than the average reader. And I'm like, okay, even if I was reading this, I could read it faster than this. It's like scrolling through the beginning of Star Wars. Like, okay, yeah, guys, I already read that paragraph twice. Let's move on.
I wonder how companies like that are still in business, because if I saw that, I'd be like, I don't care if I really want to get on this ride. I'm just closing this tab and leaving.
Go over there and you want to ride that roller coaster, you'll put up with it. Oh yeah, because look at the stuff people put up with to ride those rides. I was watching; it's like crazy.
But I think the point is, your competitor will make a more intuitive experience.
That's the good part of it, though. That's the evolution of business, and that's a good thing, because that means those people go out of business, and this other person says, you can ride my ride in 2 seconds, and you don't have to put up with this crap.
You're standing in line, the long line, waiting for everybody to do whatever.
So that's an awesome segue, though. I know that was your 3 points. So I have a segue to something else. So let's talk a little bit about privacy in this concept. Because one of the things we're very willing to give up when bad things happen, or when we really want something, is privacy. And we see that all the time. And these technologies, this identity management, this very thing, is one of the keys. Just it's this initial lever that takes us right into how much will you give up. Because security is always a needle that's moving between, I can lock this thing down. If you touch it funny, I'll just stab you. That'll solve it. I'll put it in a box and weld it shut, and you don't get to use it, and it's safe. Or it's the Wild West, and everybody's just crazy, and we have no security at all. But so we have to find that tipping point of where we want to be. But it's easy for us to let that start to slide over. And one of the things, first place I saw this is a show called Black Mirror. They had an episode called Nosedive, and it won an Emmy for being such a good episode, and I thought it was very poignant. And it's about where your social media scores determine things you can do and things you can't do, and it's just constantly being tracked. So you go up and you buy a soft drink, and that changes your health score, but it improves your consumer score or whatever. And as you develop, and so then we start seeing the Chinese good citizenship. So China's using facial recognition on crowds, or using and it's really scary because they start to do this. So how do you think that we see that as a culture? Because I can see our culture very quickly giving that up at the consumer level. Enterprise is going to be a little more resistant, but the consumer, that I want it. I want to be safe. I don't want to walk in here and feel the threat, and I've got cameras everywhere that are going, good guy, bad guy, good guy, bad guy, good guy, bad guy, maybe bad guy. Let's get him and take him inside for a question. Those people are just excluded. So what do you think about that?
I have a few thoughts. I mean, I think on the one hand, I'm happy I'm not necessarily in the business of free in exchange for marketing data. I know generally, to be honest, there are like two major approaches in software industry, the big software houses, right? There are two. Ones that are sell value, so sell products, Apple, Microsoft, and so on. And then there are those who give you free stuff in exchange for marketing data, and then they sell ads, right? And I'm glad I'm not, because I do actually have some ethical concerns with doing that to people.
Most of us do.
But in the broader sense, I think it is a problem we're going to have to address. I don't know how bad it's going to get. Personally, it's of concern that people are unable and unaware of what they're giving up.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if there is a possibility for a new business model that big software houses can make money off of something other than simply dealing in your privacy, or some legislation is going to come out of left field and somehow force, maybe from Europe or somewhere, that's going to force them to give control to the end users about.
That's what scares me more.
I was just reading about, and I haven't read the actual article, but I am told that there was an article in the New York Times just recently, in the last week or so, about the visiting Seattle and what makes Seattle an interesting place. And one of their key points was that all of the cool around Seattle stemmed from technology, in particular the Amazon Go cashierless stores, where they monitor you through the entire store with cameras, seeing the things you pick up. You walk out without checking out, and it automatically deducts from your Amazon account, right? Mm-hmm. And as one end of the spectrum, to me that's personally terrifying. I don't want to go in a store and every motion is tracked by videos. It's probably happening everywhere, but I like the fiction at least. But seeing that as a feature is something that's you should visit it and check it out is just mind blowing to me. And I worry that as a culture we are losing our desire for privacy. On the other end of the spectrum, you do see pushback to that in many places. People who do care about privacy, people who do care about kind of having their rights and personal lives respected, mm-hmm. which is great. And I'm 100% on board with Tarek. One of the things I absolutely love about working for a place like we do is that it's a place that primarily makes stuff and sells it, right?
Yeah.
And the consumer is not the product. And so when the consumer does become the product, there are a lot of issues there.
Oh, yeah. It can be fun, though, if you have a little bit of evil mixed into it.
Yeah, and then there are the ethical concerns around even the whole public, what do you call it, scanning of people with the models that they're trained. And this is an ethical concern that's been raised in the AI circles.
Absolutely, yeah.
If you're training, what do you call it?
Facial recognition.
A computer mm-hmm. model with an existing prisoner set that is already predominantly skewed, biased, proven by data and law against, for example, minorities, then it is more likely to spot bad guys among minorities than among the general population. And so you're kind of basically making the computer inherit the racial bias that was in the humans. Yeah. Right? And so that's a problem in and of itself.
Well, yeah, I've always said real AI shouldn't come from humans at all. It should be spontaneous, because otherwise it's really just a fake human. And people are always about Turing tests, and I was like, why do you want to pass a Turing test? You just want a computer to prove it's as ineffective and inefficient as humans? Exactly. I'm like, wouldn't it be better if it was just like I was like, when there's an AI, you'll know it because it's just going to wipe us all out and be like, oh, these pests are gone now. Everything's nice and clean. Thank you.
We just need to figure out how to bootstrap a perfectly fair and perfectly ethical computer overlord and let it run the place.
And then we'll all be fine, or we'll be exterminated. Either way it works. But Tarek Dawoud, Michael McLaughlin, I really want to thank both of you for being on Security Weekly. It was great talking to you about identity management. You have some great ideas, and it's lots of fun. Hope you enjoy the rest of Ignite, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.